NIO could end up being a much larger company than anyone realizes. Let's talk about it. In the comment section the other day on a video, Paul Thomas, thanks for stopping through, Paul Thomas Investing, at Real Paul Thomas, this is his comment. Could NIO and Onvo be the next Toyota and Lexus? Lexus is the luxury brand. Toyota is the mass market brand. Lexus sells about 6% of what Toyota sells. 800,000 vehicles last year versus 11 million. NIO is the luxury brand, so could Onvo end up selling 10 times as much as NIO? I'd love to hear your thoughts. My response, it could. I believe William Li wanted to initially establish NIO with legitimate premium brand power, and then followed up with Onvo and Firefly, the sub-brands, which both become more attractive because of NIO's premium status and brand power. NIO Park is still being built out, and if that cluster itself will eventually represent 1 million annual capacity, the original JAC NIO factory plus other subsequent or future factories could represent numbers far beyond what anyone is expecting or anticipating at this stage. The upgradable swappable battery technology plays a key role in this, as the shell of anything coming out from these three brands will maintain better value with a longer life. And the user or buyer or consumer, they still get the benefit of BaaS, battery as a service, which reduces their upfront cost and gives them flexibility for range or upgraded battery technology over time. William Li, with NIO, has solved problems well into the future. And eventually people will figure it out. But for now, it's still really early. Let me show you what I mean. This is the BEV, the battery electric vehicle brand's retail volume. This is for the first half of 2024 in China. And if you'll note here, this is probably the easiest way to do it. Let's just look at the 300,000 to 400,000 RMB price range. NIO with the first position in the BEV space. But if we go over to the NEV rankings, that's new energy vehicles. So you've got, for example, Li Auto and Aido, they've got their extended range, essentially hybrid vehicles. NIO drops to the third position. And now let's talk the whole industry, passenger vehicles. This includes ICE or gas sales. And now what do we have? First of all, you notice the German brands, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Audi. Those are the companies NIO is looking to compete with in this space. But look at how far NIO drops and how many more sales there are that other companies are doing. This is a nod. It's still very early, because in the future, all these sales will be NEVs, if not EVs. And NIO, with the upgradable swappable battery technology, does have an advantage. Some companies have figured it out, and that's why some of those folks are partnering with NIO. But here's the other thing. This is really big picture. And I shared this in a video before, but I wanted to bring it up because if we think about China and just how massive, how enormous that market is, and then also recognize this is still an emerging market. For China to get to just half the penetration that the US market has, for example, there are another 300 million future car owners that will be added along with these sales, including the ICE sales that will convert and change in the future over to NEV or EV sales. So I guess my question is this: time frame, what is it? I don't know. And one of the reasons that I have it at the bottom of the screen is this has always been a long-term play for me. I wanted to provide myself with some tangible sort of levels that I could see the growth of NIO. So that's why I've got the first major growth phases for NIO identified down there. Market awareness, we're still in that phase. It's still that early. The company and the brand are still being recognized. And I think Onvo, the release of the L60, their first model coming in September with new deliveries, will only further that. I also think it's noteworthy, and we should talk about this, because the infrastructure build out, I think NIO made the correct move by focusing on the build out of more power swap stations in China before they really focused and started ramping sales. And I think that will help long-term, big picture. Also, if we want to talk briefly about Europe, one thing that I had mentioned earlier was NIO with power swap stations and trying to put those up in new territories, new countries. You've got regulations to deal with at the local level. It takes time. But now they're starting to perhaps ramp in Europe with their power swap stations. And so as that infrastructure goes into place, and then I think Firefly might be the key for the European market when that comes out in 2025. Also, you know what? Let's jump back here. I'd like to point something else out. if we go back to the pure battery electric vehicle brands, and we've got all these price ranges, right? And NIO at this stage, they've just started doing some of these sub 300,000 RMB price sales. But otherwise, this is where they've been focused, in the 300,000 to 400,000 RMB price range, the 400,000 to 500,000 RMB price range, and the 500,000 and above. Now, the ET9 that NIO is coming out with in 2025 will fall into this 500,000 RMB and above price range. But the Onvo is probably going to fall in here. This L60 that's going to start deliveries in September will probably be in this price range, the 200,000 to 300,000 RMB price range. And then later in 2025, Firefly is probably going to come in here, perhaps even both of these, depending in part on what pricing is and battery as a service, what that does for the reduction on the upfront price. So the point is, NIO has an enormous path, potentially speaking, with market share that they can go after, especially as we see them continue to roll out with new products. I think it was a brilliant play to establish the brand and the premium nature of the brand first with NIO, and now coming out with the sub brands after. I think that only helps position NIO for long-term bigger profits, better awareness, recognition. We're already hearing about some of the things that I'm seeing and reading, folks talking about how they didn't think they could afford a NIO, and now that Onvo's coming out, they're realizing, because they have recognized, those folks who are aware of NIO, they know it's a really good brand, and so they're excited about the possibility of being able to buy something that comes from NIO, essentially Onvo, that sub brand. So this is, I think we're still at a very early point in a lot of ways, and I don't know, I'd like to hear from others. I'll be back with more content before you know it. Thanks. Have a great day. I will see you all again very soon.